Hi, Colin. How's it going?
Not too bad. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you. I
Good, good.
really enjoyed the movie, thought it was brilliant. So,
Oh, thank you.
congratulations. For
Thank
anyone who
you.
doesn't know about the film, No Ordinary Heist, what do they need to know?
Yeah, it's inspired by the true events of the 2004 Northern Bank robbery, which at the time was the biggest cash heist in British and Irish history, and it took place in the centre of Belfast a couple of days before Christmas. And the reason it is such an incredible story, not just the human spirit of the lads who had to carry it out, but the fact that the gang never stepped foot inside the bank at any one time is sort of one of those appealing characteristics that appeal to me.
So, would you say that was the element of the story that made you think this is a story that I need to tell?
Yeah, I passed the bank the morning after the robbery when it was all cordoned off, and I was in between, was I going to be a graphic designer? Was I going to make short films, or I think I'd maybe already made a short. I can't remember my timeline. It isn't quite there, but it always just intrigued me, and the more I read about it. I was never interested in the political fallout, and what it became. That never appealed to me at all. It was always those 48, 24 hours of how they were able to do what they did. That was the big appeal.
Do you feel like you had much creative license with the story? Did you want to keep it as true as possible, or did you want to sort of dramatize it in a way that made it more tense film?
Well, the cliche is fact is better than fiction, or whatever it is, and the facts in this story were just. As I just kept reading about it or hearing about it, I was like, "Good Lord, that is incredible." So there was a hell of a lot of really strong material there that, and events and things that happened that we were like, right, we lock that in, we lock that in, we lock that in. But almost everything around it, in terms of the sort of family dynamics and the locations we chose and stuff, we had free reign. I mean, in actuality, the vault that the money was taken from was an incredibly boring, four walled room, with shelves, and we found this location in Dublin that we shot in, and it felt like almost like a horror film. It was all the claustrophobia and the low ceilings and stuff like that, and we immediately, myself and Ruth Carter, one of the producers, actually, can I please mention their names, just for the record? Ruth Carter, Damon Lane, and Joanna Hogan, because they put a hell of a lot of work in it. My co-writer is Aisling Corstein. But anyway, when we found that location, uh, it was yeah, it Ruth and I looked at each other and we suddenly thought, oh, there's now a horror aspect to this film, with just that it was such an ancient old 1600s building, with the vaulted ceilings and low ceilings and the lighting and the cages and all that stuff and the big old vault door. It was in fact an old bank vault back in the day, but it was in Southern Ireland, so yeah, creative license, of course, the bottom line is you have to entertain. You can be as close to the subject as you like, but we weren't making a documentary. That's been done. We weren't writing a book on the subject, a podcast. We were setting out to make an entertaining film that hopefully puts bums on seats.
I'm interested to know, going into the film, how did you decide what tone that you wanted to aim for? There's obviously a lot of focus on the two main characters within the film and sort of their dynamic, but how did you decide that balance between focusing on them at the center and the sort of heist story playing out?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's an event that, I know heist as a genre is all about shootouts and car chases and, explosions but this was never that story. And these are real human beings that, are walking the same streets I walk, living over here and growing up in the Troubles. So tonally, we just wanted to tell that great story, and the thing about, again, growing up in the Troubles over here, there's a real gallows humor in Northern Ireland, so there's a dark humor there as well that we felt we needed to include in the script in some ways at certain times where correct. And it's funny because Eddie is actually, much as he's the most astonishing actor, there's a comic element to Eddie, especially when he runs. He's got a really funny gait. Um, so we find ourselves having to be quite quite brutal in the edit to make sure to keep, let's cut tight to make sure that, it doesn't lapse into people bursting out laughing. And there are, having sat with a couple of audiences, all over the world at this stage, um, it's funny what people laugh at. It's sort of, you go, I didn't realize that was funny, it's sort of, so I'm glad we've landed at the tone we have.
Did you feel like you had a big responsibility to the people stories that were being told, like the actual real people that it's based on?
Yeah, look, I mean, their story is harrowing, and anyone who went through that event, can never be understated what those poor families went through, and that was uppermost in our mind that you'd never want to belittle what happened there, or anyone who got caught up in the troubles, and very few people in our in this country where I live, weren't touched by the troubles in some way, but these families in particular had a pretty extraordinary experience that, yeah, yeah. I mean, we didn't set out to tell their story, if you know what I mean. We've changed a hell of a lot of the elements, but we were always very aware, even filming that, God, much as we're shooting lovely scenes and things are working out, it's like the thought of actually being in the thick of that would just be mind blowing.
Did you see the characters in the end then, or how did you want those characters to be portrayed as the audiences for the audiences when they came away? Did you want them to be seen as underdogs, like criminals, or just in a sort of very complicated scenario? How did you want that to be seen?
Our two lead characters,
Yes,
or
yeah, yeah. Sorry,
yeah,
yeah.
no, I just wanted to human. I just wanted to show two humans, fighting for their lives and their families' lives, and they're not macho men. They're not carrying guns. They're not, the sort of stereotypical sort of guys who go and rob banks. These are just guys who have just been forced into something that, I guess it's like any sort of hostage taking type situation or movie where their plan for their day or their days is just yanked out of their control. So that was a big thing, was to show how, again, back and sort of reusing the same phrase each time, the human spirit of what you can do under immense pressure.
I particularly found the moment towards the end, trying to word it in a non-spoilish way, where Barry and Richard were sort of bonding post uh, fallout of the heist taking place. How important was that for you in terms of showing the evolution of their character dynamic and them as them people in that story?
Yeah, well, within the true story, which plays out the way it plays out, you're always looking for, it's a bit of a cliche, but you're always looking for a character arc. That is screenwriting 101, so we felt that, these two guys pressed together, there has to be some redemption at the end. And in fact, there's actually, I think we cut out probably about three or four scenes off the end of the film where they met up on a park bench and they looked out over Belfast. And beautiful scene, incredible. I absolutely loved it. It was a really great scene. But again, we just got to the end and we realized, that scene sitting on the vault floor where Barry's upset and Richard comforts him and they keep it brief, a little bit of a joke, and we just drift off from them. It said it all. And that's what, as a filmmaker, your antennae needs to be pretty high and acute to know that, you've told it, shut up, move on, cut, so, but yes, I wanted the characters to feel rounded.
And I mean, I thought that the two leads especially were phenomenal in the film. What was your experience like working with them?
Look, again, I'm throwing out all these bloody cliches, but they were absolutely fantastic. I mean, I'd met with Éanna before Eddie. I walked around. There's a place in Dublin called Stephen's Green because I'd driven down there, and I said, "Éanna, is it okay if we just walk and talk?" And it was an icy winter morning, and the two of us just sat on a park bench and just chatted, and I just knew, and what I was chuffed about was he knew as well in terms of this is what I want to do, and he was about to, his stars mega on the rise. Then I heard that Eddie was interested as well, and I looked at Eddie's work and blown away, but a wee bit terrified of him, to be honest. And looked into interviews that he did, and he's a great campaigner for the likes of Tourette's and stuff like that. His son sadly has Tourette's suffer. Make sure I get that phrase right, Danny. I'm not sure if
Yeah,
it's
yeah, of course.
suffer or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
whatever the phrase is there. Um, so he's just an amazing man. And the mask never dropped once. The two of them were absolutely amazing, and they're best of friends. We were out in Belfast 2 nights ago because we had our Belfast premiere, and they headed off into the night, arm in arm, away back to their hotel. So it was just a great collaboration right across the board.
I think I read that Eddie was interviewed and he said that he read the script whilst on holiday, right? And he just liked it
Yeah,
straight away.
which amazes me because he never stops working.
Really?
He works 366 days of the year, because whenever we actually finally said, right, let's use Eddie, trying to work around his schedule was a bloody nightmare. So yeah, I mean, obviously at that time, you're trying to bring your cast together, and it's so much to do with availability and stuff like that, and people's diaries, and so you find yourself sort of checking different people and what are they available for this part of the year. And no, 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 no. And Eddie's name came back at one point, and it was like, well, look, let's get the script to Eddie. I'd worked with Toby Jones in my previous film, which was an independent film as well, and it turns out those two are very good friends, but they're both, in my opinion, they're like movie validators. If you've got them in your movie in whatever role, you're going to get something damn solid out of them. And for Eddie to be a leading man, which was lovely with Eddie and the amount of experience he's had, he's filmed with all the top directors in the world, which was so terrifying for me. But he really, really appreciated the role as the leading man, because he would always tend to play the sort of secondary roles or the villain or, because he's just so powerful, but the two of them were just, as he said himself, if I could take this Belfast crew and Colin myself, I'd work the rest of my days with these guys. So.
Perfect. And the last question for me, what do you hope people will talk about and feel after they watch this film? What's the aim?
Yeah, it's one of those ones, Danny, where independent filmmaking is incredibly difficult. An old producer friend of mine described it as gathering cats in a storm, and I really do believe that that's the best description of trying to put together the finance, the casting, and all the rest. And you just hope that first of all the movie it rises above the parapet and people get to see it, but also word of mouth. I just hope there's people, your age, older, who say, look, this is worth a watch. It's not what you think it is. It's not a heist movie. It's not macho men running about with guns and car chases. So yeah, you just want something that leaves a little bit of permanence in the mind down the line. That 10 years from now, hopefully someone says, did you ever watch that No Ordinary Heist? It's like really, because that's what's happening with Zoo at the moment, which is really, really lovely. I mean, that's now 7 years something from Zoo, and it's still ticking over in the background in various territories. So you just want your work out there and people to enjoy it, and fingers crossed.